Jack Smith can't resist a $5 footlong. That's according to what we see right there. New and exclusive CNN video of the special counsel at Subway, declining, though, to respond to reporters' questions about today's big news. A target letter sent to the former president of the United States. CNN's Evan Perez was there trying to track down the special.
And just one last point. Jack Smith, remember when the classified documents target letter, when Trump announced that, there was a lot of commentary. Is Jack Smith making a mistake here? Is he leaving this all to Donald Trump? And then they released the indictment and we all said, wow. Wow, we read it, we saw the documentation, we saw the level of detail. Jack Smith going to Subway today is a message to Donald Trump. Donald Trump tries to intimidate people. He tries to bully people. He tries to scare you away. That was Jack Smith with no words and a simple $5 sub in his hand saying, I'm here, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, the imagery was intentional and spoke volumes.
It really is.
2 years later.
Well, there's some breaking news out of Washington. Special counsel Jack Smith, he's resigned from the Justice Department. That resignation effective yesterday. Smith announced his exit in a court filing that was made public today. But you know, the move is not a surprise. Smith was expected to leave the department by January 20th when President-elect Trump takes office. It is, though, still unclear at this hour when the first volume of Smith's report on the January 6th attack will be released. Volume 2 on the Florida documents case, we're told that will not be released because that is still an active prosecution.
Yes, finally, it is officially over for Trump deranged Jack Smith. Okay, we have gotten our final W over a man who has utterly failed at throwing Trump in prison. Okay, that was his task. Okay? He had one job, to try to throw Trump in prison, to have him convicted before the election in order to try to rig the election against Trump. And he failed. Okay, thanks to Trump pushing back his legal team and also the Supreme Court as well, too. Okay, we got to give a big shout out to the Supreme Court. Okay, the same court that the Democrats are trying to overthrow, right? That's what they want to do. Okay, they want to overthrow the Supreme Court while also screaming about how Trump is a threat to democracy when these people quite literally do not believe in the legitimacy of the highest court in the land. Okay, the Supreme Court was responsible for getting the January 6th case delayed due to their ruling on presidential immunity, in which they didn't really side with Trump, okay, but they weren't really against Trump in the sense that they said, okay, well, the president in his official actions, yes, he is immune. And when it comes to private actions, yeah, that is subject to, criminal charges, okay, if the president broke the law. However, you guys need to go back and work that out, right? Go back and work that out. Come back to us, basically guaranteeing that the January 6th case would not go to trial before the election, okay? Also, shout out to Eileen Cannon, the federal judge out in Florida, who is responsible for not only just delaying the classified documents case, but just outright dismissing it because she ruled that Jack Smith was not constitutionally appointed, okay, that he did not have the powers to actually be prosecuting and going after the former president of the United States, okay? And because of these conservative judges, okay, these heroes, when it comes to the federal cases against Trump, he was not convicted. There was no trial before the election, which I think played a big role in the election being fair, okay? Because the whole point of the political persecutions against Trump was not that these charges are just, okay? No. The whole point was to try to rig the election against Trump and to turn the public against Trump, okay? So I hope that what we've seen over the last 2 years or so from the courts helps people realize how important it is and how great it is that we do have control over the federal courts, okay? That conservatives, for the most part, do control the federal courts, and that is a good thing, right? It's one of those things that has stopped the Democrats from successfully fully implementing their authoritarian agenda. Like, for example, Joe Biden, when it comes to him trying to forgive student loan debt, right? Trying to override something that is only a power of Congress, which is the power of the purse. Joe Biden tried to forgive student loan debt unilaterally. In some cases, he's just flat out ignored the Supreme Court. But he would have went a lot further if it wasn't for the Supreme Court, okay? So, again, very important stuff to go over. They are the primary reason why Jack Smith lost That is the primary reason why he has been humiliated, and he is a loser, okay? He will go down in history as a loser, okay? Now, I think the final question is whether or not Jack Smith will receive a pardon from Joe Biden, who apparently is putting out there that he may not be done with the pardons due to him being afraid of what Trump may say leading up to his inauguration, in which, you know, who knows? Maybe Joe Biden will hand Jack Smith a pardon because he's afraid that Trump will go after Jack Smith.
Can you just give us a sense of what other pardons and commutations you're considering in your last 10 days?
Well, the answer is no, because two things. One is that it depends on some of the language and expectations that Trump broadcast in the last couple days here as to what he's going to do. The idea that he would punish people for not adhering to what he thinks should be policies related to his well-being is outrageous. But there's still consideration of some folks, nothing but no decision.
All right, thanks, everybody. Have you talked about what kind of post?
Yeah, so you see, they heard that, okay? Who knows? Maybe Joe Biden will give Jack Smith a pardon along with Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger and Adam Schiff and all these other people. We don't really know yet, okay? I'm just saying it's a possibility, okay? But Jack Smith, in his final act of failure, has tried to release his report, his final findings when it comes to the classified documents case in the January 6th case. Now, we've already talked about how Judge Eileen Cannon has basically stopped that, at least temporarily, when it comes to the classified documents case and the January 6th case. Now, it seems as if the January 6th case report will still come out. The classified documents case probably will continue to be blocked. They probably won't be able to get that one out before Trump is inaugurated, which means it probably will never come out. But the January 6th case, the report will probably come out at some point soon, okay, maybe over the next 24 to 48 hours. However, it really doesn't matter that much. But again, this is his last act of failure.
Well, a federal appeals court has ruled that special counsel Jack Smith can release part of his report on Trump's election interference case. Although the charges have been dropped, Smith is still required by law to release a final report. Now, that redacted Volume 1 could be made public as soon as this Sunday. Let's bring in Jonathan Turley, Fox News contributor and constitutional law attorney, for more on this. Jonathan, welcome. All right, what say you about this? Judge Eileen Cannon in the beginning said, look, it's irreversible error if we let this go public, and now appeals court says, well, you can release it anyway. What's going to happen?
Well, I think this is the result most of us expected, because they're not going to release that portion of the report that deals with the Florida documents case, because there are defendants still pending in that case. But this is, unfortunately, the outcome of a really ill-considered special counsel investigation. I mean, Jack Smith is the ultimate parade general. He did a lot of parading and never saw the inside of a trial on these cases. And the problem that I have with that is that I think that these cases were fundamentally flawed, particularly the case that is going to be the subject of this release. This argument that he made that he has evidence of interference with this election and the case he brought in Washington, I think, was riddled with constitutional problems, not the least of which was the First Amendment. I believe the president had protected free speech interests that Jack Smith just brushed aside.
So talk to us about the legal implications, if any, of this release and the real-world implication. Does this have the potential to damage President Trump's execution, fulfillment of his duties as president after this is released?
Look, I think this is speaking to a jury that's already left the courthouse. I mean, there's going to be a lot of people that read this, a lot of media folks that are going to echo whatever he says in this report. It is a one-sided report, obviously. This is not a trial. This is what the prosecutors wanted to prove. So you can take that for what it's worth. But the American people already rendered a bit of a verdict in the last election. They set aside this narrative from the media, from the prosecutors, from judges like Juan Merchan. They turned their back on all of that and said that they believed a lot of this was indeed lawfare. Now, keep in mind that what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So there's another torpedo in the water, right, if I mix my metaphors enough. And that is, we're expecting the report on Hunter Biden, which is also going to be released.
Yeah, so you seen that, you heard that. Now, I personally think that the biggest misstep that the Trump deranged prosecutors made in their cases against Trump, I think all of them made the same mistake, is they tried to line it up so that Trump will be on trial right before the election, right? Don't you guys think it's strange that when it comes to the hush money case, the Georgia case, the January 6th case, and the classified documents case, all of these cases, the trials were basically scheduled to happen right before the election, right? In the springtime. They all tried to line it up for it to happen at the same time. Well, why is that? It's because they wanted the potential conviction to have the most impact going into the election, because the whole point was not that Trump actually did anything wrong or that he's guilty. No. The whole point was to try to get him convicted of something right before the election to affect the outcome of the election. Now, had they moved quicker, had they not all tried to collude and coordinate to have Trump convicted right before the election for maximum impact, who knows? Maybe, just maybe, they would have been able to get one of the cases that people actually care about to trial before the election. But they did not anticipate that the Supreme Court would step in and basically delay the trial due to the fact that, there are issues with Jack Smith's case and the charges that he was bringing against Trump, and whether or not the actions of the president at the time were official actions or private actions, and whether or not Jack Smith is even constitutionally allowed to be going after Trump, right? So, again, these are issues that clearly Jack Smith did not anticipate, but again, because they tried to line it up to happen all at the same time, it essentially got delayed until after the election, and then when Trump won, it all fell apart because you can't really go after the president of the United States, right? He's a sitting president, and it's just kind of crazy how all this worked out, right? It's like the perfect story. It's like the greatest American comeback story ever, okay? This is the type of story that I would tell my kids, right, to be honest with you, okay? A story of strength, perseverance, and never giving up, okay? So with that being said, we got to react to the mainstream liberal media. Michael Cohen, who was convicted in relation to the hush money case against Trump, him boo-hoo-whining crying on MSNBC about how Trump basically got away, okay, and became president, and he essentially won all these cases, right? He ultimately ended up winning this whole ordeal. So without further ado, let's get into it.
I don't know where to actually begin on this one because there's so many places to start, but this all has come to a head. It's now concluded. Donald Trump is a convicted felon. He will be sworn in as the next president of the United States. You've played a major role in taking the country inside Donald Trump's world in that space. You've paid the price for doing that. What's your take right now? How do you look at his response at the sentencing, where he's won everything, bent the system to his will, if you will, and yet still lashes out, still petty in those moments before Judge Merchan?
Well, it's not Trump being petty. It's Trump understanding that he didn't do anything wrong. And no, I'm not just going to accept a conviction and the label of a felon when you didn't do anything wrong, right? So you're going to fight it until the end, right? You're just not going to take something, even though effectively, I mean, there's no punishment outside of the felon label, but why even give them that, right? I wouldn't give these people an inch either, right? That's what Trump is doing here. He's not trying to give them an inch. And when it comes to the fraudulent hush money conviction, that's probably going to be overturned. That's why I don't understand why these people keep running around taking these victory laps. Oh, Trump is a convicted felon, yada, 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 because they're just going to have to retract it probably in a couple years, okay, after this conviction is ultimately overturned.
Well, I feel very unsatisfied, as do many Americans. I believe one of two things. Either there's accountability, or they should have dismissed the case as the motion requested, put forth by Todd Blanche earlier. I believe that if there's no accountability, there's no deterrence. And if there's no deterrence, no accountability, what's the point to have the case anyway, so that we could all just turn around and refer to him now as the felon president? I mean, nobody in this country, Republican, Democrat, or Independent, should be turning around and taking solace in the fact that our incoming president, the leader of the free world, is a convicted felon. Nobody should enjoy that moniker for him, least of all him. Nobody should. And again, if there's no account, all I would have liked to have seen from Judge Merchan, one simple thing, turn around and say, not this unconditional discharge, something I've never heard of in my entire life. In fact, not only have I never heard of it, I went on to ChatGPT, despite the fact Judge Furman, vehemently believes I should never use ChatGPT and held it against me. Here's another guy I don't particularly care for. But I went on, I couldn't find a single case. I could not find a single case that had an unconditional discharge. How about make it a conditional discharge? And the condition would be, within the next 72 hours, you have to go work in a soup kitchen. Or come to New York, where he has that roadway on the West Side Highway, put on a red jumpsuit and pick up some garbage, just so that there's some accountability, some responsibility. I did 6 years, 3 years of incarceration and then 3 years of supervised release without a single second, not a minute, not an hour, not a day off of my sentence. And he doesn't even get a slap on the wrist. So I feel unsatisfied.
You gotta love it. You gotta love it. The Never Trumpers are admitting defeat. Yes, you lost, okay? By the way, Trump already worked at McDonald's, and he also worked as a garbage man. So there you go, right? There you go. I mean, it's just funny to me to watch these individuals get so upset. Because, I mean, like I told you guys before, a year ago, man, it looked bad. Like, it looked real bad, okay? If you told me a year ago that Trump would be labeled a convicted felon, but ultimately nothing would happen and he would become president of the United States, hey, I would have took that. That's a massive W. Massive W. But hey, if Michael Cohen is upset that Trump is being labeled a convicted felon while being president and he doesn't think that people should be happy with that or should be okay with that, that's cool, because he's going to overturn that conviction anyways, right? So it ain't going to last that long, okay? And eventually they're going to have to stop calling him a convicted felon, right? They're not going to be able to say, oh, well, Trump's a convicted felon. And that is what I can't wait for, okay? So it's not quite over yet, but it is over. And it's just funny to watch the mainstream liberal media admit that Trump won, okay? He won everything. But what they don't understand and what they don't realize is that the primary reason why Trump won everything is because of the political persecutions against the president, right? If it wasn't for these political witch hunts, honestly, I think that Trump would have had a harder time winning, okay? I personally think that these witch hunts motivated the base, particularly the base, to rally around Trump. It definitely helped him in the GOP primary, for sure, okay? For certain, it helped him in the GOP primary, because it was like, well, if Trump doesn't win, then he's going to jail, right? And nobody wants to see Trump in jail or prison. So I think that it ultimately backfired, right? It backfired. And that is the reality of the situation, and it is a reality that the mainstream liberal media clearly is having a hard time coping with. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.